Well, here we are. It is Thursday, the let's see, the 2nd of July, and I want to do a quick video today about a sale that's coming up on the 10th, a week from tomorrow, on Friday the 10th in Cincinnati, Ohio. And this is a company we've been paying a bit of attention to lately because they've had some very good Chinese porcelain come in. They've had several sales of Ming blue and white wares, and it all came from one collection. A family that had lived over in Asia in the 1950s and 60s and so forth. They accumulated a lot of material, and a lot of it is Ming wares, a lot of Ming blue and white wares, and mainly provincial wares, which are rather fascinating because the provincial wares, of course, were made from decorated with cobalt that was locally sourced rather than the more expensive cobalt that was typically imported from the Middle East, the high-end stuff that was used in the imperial kilns. They didn't have that, so they used locally sourced blue cobalt. And the pieces are very folky. They're very loosely drawn, quickly drawn by local folk artists, and they're not constrained by the requirements of the official kilns. So they're very, very different, but they're a lot of fun to look at and a lot of fun to enjoy. And they come in a huge range of decorative motifs, huge range of shapes, and so forth. And they're often referred to as minyao, or provincial wares. And this sale is just full of them, and we're going to go through it. Like I said, the sale is on the 10th, and it's being held by Caza Sikes out there in Cincinnati. They do a good job. Now, pay attention. Their estimates tend to be very, very low because they're there to sell the stuff. So as we've seen in the past auctions, things that were estimated at 200 to 300 ended up going for in the thousands. And that's not anything wrong with their estimating, but I've talked with them, and they basically said, look, we want the stuff to sell. We want it to do well. The audience knows what the things are worth, and we're going to go with that. So there we are. And this is the sale. And you can go to their site and save some money on commissions, or you can do it through live auctioneers. You pay a little extra, but it's a little more convenient, maybe. But at any rate, I recommend going to the site and bidding. But we're going to take a look and take see what's in the sale. All right. It's 130 or 40 lots, as I recall. Pretty good sale. And they have things like this. It's very interesting and rather atypical type of Guan Li crackleware dish. It's about 9 inches in diameter. But notice the cobalt is very nicely done. It's a nice deep cobalt with a rather unusual border motif of these sort of peach-shaped objects with flowers and fans and so forth in them, and in the middle is a bird on the rock, which you often see in a lot of Ming blue and white wares. It's a nice looking piece. The estimate, they're only estimating at 100 to 200. I won't keep saying that, but that's sort of the estimate range they use. It should bring more. It should bring probably 400 or 500, but we'll see. The starting price is just $50. That's all there is to it. It's very simple. And then there's this. There are numerous lots of jars. If you like those very, very pretty, very interesting, small Yuan Ming Dynasty jars and jarlets in pieces made for the Vietnamese market, there's a number of lots in this sale. This is actually one of the smaller lots. There's another lot in there that I don't know how many it has in it, probably 20 or 25 of them, I think. But this is a very nice one. I like the one up front here with the loop handles. That looks like a late Yuan example. You have some very typical sort of Ming pieces and so forth, crackleware and so forth. The jars also, these little oil jars, they appear to be in very nice condition. And here's a lot of them, 10 of them in one lot. They should bring $800 to $1,000. They're estimated, as I said, 200 to 300, but they should bring that. They're rather nice. I've always liked those little jars. And then this is a really famous, well-known Ming Yao or provincial bowl that they did, this decoration with the horse and rider. You've seen them before. I've never seen 5 of them offered at one time, though. And there's another lot, I think, with another 6 or 7 in it. So the family obviously liked these bowls. Because they were produced sort of in the middle of around the 16th century. They were very, very popular, apparently. I've seen them around New England for years. You'll come across an estate, and there'll be just one of them, though, on a shelf. Here's a nice lot of 5 of them. They're about 5 or so inches in diameter, 5 3/4 inches in diameter. They have nice-looking inverted rims. They're very well potted. But I love the quick drawing, how they were done. Because they were doing these in these fairly large provincial workshops where they would turn out a whole bunch of bowls, and then they'd have people there just decorating them, moving them down the line, getting them, doing the horse and riders, doing the floral motifs in between, and moving on. And you can also see some considerable variations in the cobalt, how it fired, depending on where it was in the kiln and when it was fired, because all of these were probably not made at the same time. The kilns that made these made them repeatedly over 50 or 100 years. But here's a nice looking grouping of them. And so that's your chance to get 5 of them in one swoop. You can have your breakfast cereal in them. And then these jarlets here. This is sort of an interesting form. It's not a form you see terribly often. They had one, I think, in their last sale of this shape. And here are 3 more. And they are very differently decorated. Each one, the one on the left has this rather nice looking, lightly cobalt decorated butterfly on it. And then you have one in the middle here with these sort of rocky outcroppings. It looks like bamboo trees and so forth. And then you have this one with grass, splays of grass coming up with insects flying over it. Very attractive, though. And these are around 6 inches tall, and they're probably worth $200 a piece, $200 or $300 a piece. Something like that is a reasonable estimate. They may go for less because right now the market seems to be a little going sideways, so it's a good time to buy things. But that's a nice looking lot. And then this is a late Ming example. If you look at the pattern on here, if those mountains look familiar, it's because you've seen it before on Swato ware pieces, these big Swatoware dishes and chargers. They'll have rows of these mountains going through the middle of them, very typically. And this is sort of that same pattern. But I've actually haven't seen one before on a planter like this one. And these are not big planters; these are fairly small. This one is 4 inches in height. They're fairly small. They're almost like cups, maybe for starting plants or something. And here's a picture of the interior. There's a nice looking picture of the bottom. Like I said, it's a late Ming example, probably around the Guan Li period. Could even be transitional, but I don't think so. I don't think it's transitional. And here's the other side of it, too. This is interesting. It's got trees and flowers coming up on it on this side, and the front of it is like this. That's a nice looking thing. Should bring $600-700. Very, very, I think that's just an interesting example. I like the shape. And then you have a whole pile of these Guan Li and late Ming examples. You've got a Fu lion in the upper left, a phoenix. You've got rocks with, it looks like maybe some birds on it. You've got some Fu lions tumbling around with silk balls. You've got a couple of kids playing over here in the yard. You've got another Fu lion here, and then you've got one here with, I think it's just flowers on it. But it's a nice lot. It's a good-looking lot. It's an interesting lot. And all of these plates are probably 6 to 8 inches in diameter, something like that. Okay, the largest is 6 inches. There we go. Okay, so they're sort of on the small sides, but they're nice looking, and they would display well. They'd look very interesting, and they're all Ming. Every one of them is a Ming example, probably late 16th century, somewhere in there. But also notice the range of color in the cobalt, too, which is something interesting you see on these provincial wares, depending on the cobalt they had that day and how they applied it. Had a huge, and how and where it was fired in the kiln. That's a huge impact on how the color is when it's done. And then there was this. Now, some of you may remember this. This was in a sale 2 auctions ago. And apparently the guy in Asia that bought it, oh, surprise, didn't pay his bill. So they're reoffering it. There's nothing wrong with it at all. You should have paid for it. As I recall, it sold for $3,000 or $4,000 at least, somewhere around there. You can go back and look at I think it was 2 auctions ago. I really liked this thing. I thought it was a wonderful thing. It's about 9 inches long. It's a good-sized porcelain of an elephant. It's got a metal trunk, obviously, and a metal finial over the fill hole. It's a ewer. Basically, it's basically just it's a wine ewer of some kind, but I think it's absolutely charming. Probably for the Vietnamese market. Nice looking. See what it brings this time. The estimate is just $300 to $500. They know it'll bring more than that, but that's the estimate that's sort of stuck onto it. And then a nice pair of Ming bowls. These are interesting because they're very different. I like the mix. The one on the right has a dragon against a blue background and swirling clouds, and then on the left you have the phoenix. This looks like the tail of a phoenix going around the side. There's more of the dragon. I'm trying to see if they have a good picture of the phoenix's head. No, apparently not. All right. Well, at any rate, that's it. It's marked on the bottom. Late Ming. Nicely potted, though. Good shape. Nice deep cobalt. Fun pieces. And they are 5 inches in diameter, the largest one. So they're sort of middle size for a bowl, I suppose. And they should bring, $300 to $500, somewhere around there, maybe a little more. They're quite attractive. The one on the left has a very nice cobalt color. It's a very pleasing color. This one here. It's nice and dark and rich. The one on the right's good too. It's a slightly grayer tone. There's minor fritting on the upper rim here. You can actually see it against the background paper they used, but it looks good. It looks good. These both look very, very nice. And then hopping along over to this. Now, they have dated this as Ming. I think it's much more likely to be an 18th century bowl, probably Qing. There's a little bit of bleeding in the cobalt, but the cobalt color is very deep and dark. The lappets, the Greek border up around the top. And then you have these chimeras going around the outside of it. Very stylized with these wild tails that they put on them. And the interior of them is just simply decorated with a double ring and a little cluster of, looks like a cluster of scrolls, perhaps. And then the bottom of it just has a couple of marks on it. But this to me looks much more like an 18th century bowl than a Ming bowl. I'm not criticizing them for it. I think maybe they just got some misinformation. But it's a very nice looking bowl. And it should, how big is it? Before I open my big mouth. It's 6 3/4 inches wide. So it's a pretty good size. But I think it's very attractive. I think it's very, very attractive piece of porcelain. Probably, $400 to $600, $500 to $700, somewhere in there. But we'll see. These are all, the estimates these days are getting really tough because we've seen such an uneven auction results lately. But if you're looking for something to buy this summer and you're a Ming blue and white buyer, this might be your best opportunity to get some interesting pieces. And then there's this one. I love the shape of this bowl. It's sort of a bell form with this very, very thin everted rim off the top. And then these sprays of vines sort of coming up out of the plants. And so forth. There's some minor glaze imperfections and some firing flaws down here on the base. You can see them. But I think the shape of the bowl, the form of the bowl, and the decoration, this sort of minimalist decoration, there's an insect flying by. I find this to be a very, very attractive, sort of interesting piece. And the inside of it has a heron in it standing amongst foliage, which is sort of interesting how they did that. And there's the bottom of it. Very typical for a Ming piece of that period. Nicely cleaned up, though. You'll notice the foot rim is beautifully trimmed on this. It slopes slightly inward, and then you have this recessed, flat, unglazed bottom. It's a good-looking bowl. I like that a lot. And, 3 to 500, 4 to 500, something like that. And then here's another one. Now, there are several of this style in this sale, which is sort of interesting. This is this one. This is a dragon bowl. And notice how these are very quickly outlined and then sort of quickly washed in with cobalt. So they have a very almost folk art look to them. And here's the dragon on the other side, and there's the pearl floating, blazing along in the clouds and so forth. And notice the dragon's got that Ming sort of goofy face they gave them. The difference between the dragons of the Ming dynasty and the Qing dynasty I always find amusing, because the Ming dragons are always sort of, they tend to be sort of not terribly ferocious, we'll put it that way. They sort of galloping along, sort of funny, good-natured dragons. And the Qing dynasty, they got quite ferocious, especially during the Qianlong period. The Kangxi period too, I guess, but much more formal looking and much more dominating. And in the Ming dynasty, not so much, except on some of the imperial. There's a famous cloisonné jar in the British Museum that has a rather ferocious Ming dragon on it. A big cloisonné jar that it was on the cover of a book on an exhibition they had a few years ago. But at any rate, I just like the way these are done. And this is a nice one. There's several, like I said, there's several more of them in the sale. You got to go through the catalog and check it all out. This one measures 6 inches in diameter, 2 3/4 inches tall. Looks to be in good shape. It's probably a $300 to $500 bowl. And then over here, here are the other ones. Oh, here they are. I didn't know I saved them. Okay, there we go. Here's another one down here of that same pattern. Here's another one over here. There's another one up here. These are actually pretty refined examples. These are nice looking, but again, very similar, same period, generally speaking. Again, you have that quickly outlined dragon and floral elements and whatever the elements they're going to put onto it, and then they quickly wash it in with the cobalt, fill it in. The potting on these is quite good and very consistent. all the way through. There's the interior. Again, these appear to be 16th century examples. Most of these are 16th century. There's a few a little bit earlier. There's a Hongxi, a couple of Hongxi plates in here from the late 15th century, and then over to this pair of bowls. These are really neat, and you notice they have characters on them on the outsides of them with these vines and lotus blossoms and so forth. And you'll notice these characters here interspersed around the outside of the pieces. There's the bottom of it. All right. Now these, again, this is something they've done is they're saying a pair of late Ming blue and white bowls. They could also be 17th century sort of early Qing examples, judging by the endless knot motif on the bottom, because they didn't generally use that mark very much on Ming wares, but they did use it a lot on early Qing wares. So if you buy these, bid on them as though they're late Ming to early Qing. All right, somewhere in there. They're very difficult to date because the methods of making them didn't change radically in the provincial kilns during the 16th and into the 17th century. It did change a bit because there was some turmoil and so forth, and the imperial kilns were completely shut down up until about 1680 or so. So the people in Qing were sort of left to their own devices during that time period, and they produced some amazing things because they were able to do whatever it is they wanted. But these bowls are quite attractive. I like these. I like these quite a lot, and I like the fact that they're a pair. I think they're visually very successful together. They measure what are they? Each is 2¼ inches tall. So they didn't put in the width, but I'm going to bet the width is probably around 5 inches. If the folks at Caza Sikes watch this video, put the dimensions in, put the widths in. You overlooked it, but these are very attractive, and they should bring $600 to $800 anyway, maybe $1,000 for the pair. And then we get into it. There's a couple of big jars of the sale. This one I like particularly. This had been actually exhibited in a show that was involved with this collection in a book. It was at the Columbus Museum of Art. Back when was this show? Back in like the 1970s or something. Anyway, it's a Guan jar, but it's very interestingly decorated, and I love the Fu Lion on here. He's beautifully decorated, wonderful expression. He's very earnest looking, and the body is very finely painted. And notice the length of the paws. The paws look like almost like short skis, very, very long. And then you have all these cone-shaped elements and whatnot. You got the Buddhist swastika. You've got scrolls. You've got all kinds of things going on here. This is a really interesting pot, and it's pretty good size too. And there's the other side of it with another Fu Lion, looking rather ferocious, I have to say, staring up, and he's got the ribbon in his mouth with a big silk ball on the end because that's how they often depict them. And then this lotus and vine decoration around the shoulder, and then a repeat diaper pattern about the top around the mouth. The bottom of it's flat, unglazed. And this jar measures 11¾ inches, so it's pretty good size, and it's wide. So these jars always look bigger than they actually are from the heights that you look at them and you see them, and they got good width to them, so it makes them seem bigger and taller than they actually are. It's sort of a visual thing, but I think this is an awfully handsome piece of porcelain. I think it's my favorite jar in the sale, actually. There aren't that many jars, actually, but this is a really nice one, and it should do much better than the estimate. I expect this will probably bring $3,000 or $4,000 anyway. It's rather nice. And then over to this, the incense burner. Now, they have this featured on the cover of the sale, and it has a Jing mark on it, but I think it's a Qing dynasty 18th or early 19th century incense burner, from what I'm seeing. But it's an interesting form because it has these flange edges on it, and you don't see it often on porcelain incense burners done this way, but you see it in cloisonné done all the time this way. If you've seen cloisonné incense burners, they often put these flange ends on it, and very, very similarly, but you don't see it often with the porcelain. But I like the twin dragons. I love the mask legs coming off the bottom. It is missing its cover, though. It did have a cover at one point. But the legs definitely, the piece definitely has some age to it. I don't think this is anything to be concerned about as far as being an antique or not. It's got some definite signs of age. Is good. There's actually some bubbling and bubble pops here on the leg. One of the legs, I forget which one it was. Hold on. It's this one. There it is, right at the top. There you can see it. You can see some little pops in the bubbles where the cobalt burned a little bit through. But this looks absolutely fine. But I suspect this is an 18th or 19th century burner from what I'm seeing. But it does have a Ming mark on it, the Qing, which is kind of cool. But here's the top, and as you can see, this is unglazed and flat. And this had a cover on it at some point, clearly. And the interior, though, has this very sort of attractive bluish green interior. It's rather pretty. I think that's a nice. It looks like a pool. Very, very pretty. And here's a picture of the base when they apply the glaze so the legs will stick, and this looks good signs of wear on the feet and so forth. And yeah, that's a nice looking thing. Should do pretty well. Should bring. I don't know what this will bring. This is sort of a curious thing because it doesn't have its cover, and that does impact value. But you know, 1,000, 1,500, maybe more, maybe more. If somebody thinks it's Jing, it could bring a lot more. But I don't. The color doesn't look right to me for Jing. The color of the cobalt and the way it's drawn doesn't appear to be correct. But we'll see. In the stand, it has is quite nice as well. So you got that, and then you have this, another 16th century Ming Guan jar. And this one is done a little more focally than the last one, loosely drawn, very similar to how some of these bowls are drawn, but nice control of the cobalt. There's not a lot of bleeding in it. The outlining looks good. It's as all these provincial pieces are, it's loosely drawn, sort of just meandering around and then coloring it in. But it's got all the elements. It's got the lappet base. It's got the midsection with the vines on it, and then more vines with flowers at the top and lotus blossoms going around the upper rim. And the rim reverts out nicely at the top. And this one is also, I think, about 11 inches tall, isn't it? 11 3/4 inches in height, and they're saying it's 15th century, 15th or early 16th, somewhere in there. But it's a good looking. I know why they're saying it's 15th century because you get into the up towards the Hongi period, and sometimes the decoration could look a bit like this. So you could go with either. But this is a nice looking piece, and I think it's probably going to bring $2,000 or $3,000, I suspect. And then over to this, you have this. Now, the plate on the right here looks like it's probably a Qing dish, but the one on the left is definitely Ming. It's got this rather nice lattice pattern going around it with flowers and so forth. There were several similar to this in the last sale. And this one is actually a bit finer. Most of these measure around 10 or 12 inches. How big is this one? The largest 9 3/4 inches, 10 inches. Okay, so it's the right size for the thing. The smaller one here, look like it's probably 7 or 8 inches in width. And in the last few sales, this pattern, the one on the left, as I recall, sold for around $1,000 to $1,500 each. And you have this other plate, so the other plate on the right is probably worth $200 or $300. But they're both very pretty. You know, there we go. That's a good shot of it. Nice looking. Nice looking thing with good color and well potted, nice and evenly potted all the way around. And then over to this, here's some of the Hongi examples. 2 Hongi plates and 2 sort of Wan Li later plates here. But these both are Hongi, so they're late, the end of the 15th century, roughly. And they could be possibly a little bit into the 16th, but I don't think so. They look pretty. These are sort of Wan Li pieces. The back of it looks fine. They often with these they have a little glaze missing here and there. Yep. And the one on the last one you saw with all the kiln work is you know, out of the Swado kilns apparently. And then hopping along over to this, the last two we'll talk about are these. Nice looking pair of bowls. It's a pattern you've seen. You also see them all on Qing bowls. You see them on late Ming bowls. And what's interesting about this is that it's the same general concept layout. The one on the left is a bit more refined with a darker cobalt, and the one on the right is a little lighter in color, but a wider bowl. So it's sort of a fun mix of them. They go together very, very well. And the widest one measures 5 3/4 inches. So they have decent size to them. They look like they're in good shape. Of course, you always want to ask for condition reports and so forth. This one has this old faint sort of reddish hairline over here on the rim, which isn't uncommon on these. You often see hairlines these provincial bowls, because you have to remember these were used. People used them. These were their for sort of slightly well-off commercial, non-imperial people. These were the kind of porcelains they had for their daily meals or for celebrations or for whatever. Sort of middle class, as few as there were at the time. But there were a lot of people living there, so they had these rather nice bowls for them to use as part of their dinner table for eating. Lots of bowls of Chinese food, lots and lots of bowls. All right, so and then what's the last thing on the list? Oh, the last one here. This is another late Ming example, probably from the Wan Li era. And again, you recognize the pattern: the lotus pod coming up and the blossom on top, and then you have the ducks swimming around it and so forth. And you've got a little bit of glaze bleeding down here on the base because they're all hand dipped and so forth. And this one's probably fairly thick, and it's got a heron in the middle of it among more flowers and lotus flowers and so forth. Nice looking bowl, and it measures. Oh, this is a pretty good sized bowl. Is that 8 inches? It's an 8-inch bowl. That's a good sized bowl. It's 8 inches in diameter, which is a bit on the big size for these. They generally sort of, as we've seen, they generally top out at around 6.5 inches. This one is 8 inches, so it's got some presence to it. Should bring $350 to $500 somewhere. They may bring more if somebody loves it enough. It'll bring more. But that's the sale. There's quite a few lots in here. I forget how many lots there are in the entire sale. Let's get the lot count here. Hold on a second. Get the number. 128 lots. There we go. All right. 128 lot sale. Starts on the 10th of July, a week from Friday. So if you're not doing anything, you get into some mischief over at Caza Sikes and buy yourself something fun for the summer. There's a couple of more sales coming up that we'll also talk about in tomorrow's video on the regular Friday weekly video. And then we've got the other sales that are coming up. There's a few sales going on, but it's going to get very quiet in the month of August. I notice a lot of auctioneers that are starting to list things are trying to get them done in July because a big part of the buying world goes on vacation in August, as you all know, and in Europe, they go away. They take the month off. They know how to live, and the auction houses over there are pretty much closed. There are a few people around taking in lots for future sales, perhaps, but they don't do much in August. So you're going to have a very busy late July, and then I think it's going to be quieting down. And then in September, we got a lot of sales coming up. So it'll be interesting again. And we're going to keep our eye on the Japanese art market to see how that's doing, because there seems to be some life in that old girl yet. And that's about it. That's about it. So it's Caza Sikes, July 10th. Ming Porcelain, blue and white. Go through and pick out things. It isn't going to break the bank, but you'll be able to get yourself some nice things from an old collection. And that's it. So we'll see you tomorrow with the weekly video. Subscribe here if you haven't so far. Leave a comment. Give us a thumbs up if you like the videos, and we'll see you all again soon. And this sale will be, of those of you who are curious, this sale will be on the global pages and the Patreon pages probably by the end of today, is the last time I checked. So it should all be on there on the first couple of pages. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.